Hari Om. Greetings, everyone. Today we're going to discuss one of yoga's most effective and practical tools for cultivating growth and for overcoming obstacles that cause pain, anxiety, disharmony, and suffering. Pratipaksha Bhavana, the practice of replacing a negative thought pattern with a positive one. It addresses the question of how we can stay on our yogic path when we are disturbed and distracted by thoughts that are counterproductive to our goals. In the beginning, our involvement with yoga is marked by enthusiasm, inspired by the physical and mental benefits we experience. It's a time of high hopes. But it's not uncommon for these early days of discovery and growth to begin to lose their luster. Like a sweet honeymoon that ends all too soon, we reach a plateau where it seems that our progress has stumbled to a crawl, if it moves at all. But there's also the case of a seasoned, dedicated student of yoga, intent on transcending ignorance and attaining enlightenment this very lifetime. This goal is demanding, requiring sustained and powerful efforts on very subtle levels. For these seekers, just as for the less experienced students, the growth that they expected is elusive. Both kinds of seekers share the same obstacle, the reappearance of ingrained mental conceptions and habits that were temporarily or incompletely quieted by the insights and practices of yoga. The good news is that yoga has a proven two-part practice that helps us to get on and stay on the path, Pratipaksha Bhavana. But before we address the sutras that define Pratipaksha Bhavana, we should reacquaint ourselves with yoga's moral and ethical teachings, the Yamas and Niyamas. There are 5 yamas, which are universal resolves for proper behavior. Think of them as bright lights that reveal a way of life founded on virtue and joy, that brings harmony within and without. They're universal. They apply to every human being. The 5 yamas are harmlessness, truthfulness, non-stealing, a life dedicated to self-mastery and liberation from ignorance, and non-greed. There are also 5 niyamas: purity, contentment, self-discipline and accepting challenge as helps for purification, regular repeated study of sacred wisdom, and wholehearted devotion and dedication to Ishvara, God. That being done, we can now look at Pratipaksha Bhavana. There's 2 sutras, Sutras 33 and 34 in the 2nd chapter of the Yoga Sutras. First one, when doubt or wayward thoughts disturb the cultivation of the yamas and niyamas, generate the opposite, a counterforce of thoughts, images, or feelings that have the power to uplift, invigorate, inspire, and steady the mind. This is Pratipaksha Bhavana. A key word to understand here is wayward. Wayward refers to thoughts or behaviors that are erratic, that constantly shift from subject to subject. Thoughts or behaviors that are engaged in regardless of consequences. And in a worst-case scenario, it refers to a rebellious and defiant state of mind. In short, doubts and wayward thoughts are thoughts that disturb the cultivation of the yamas and niyamas, that work against yoga's moral and ethical foundation. Note that this first version of Pratipaksha Bhavana is like a first aid remedy, meant to rescue a mind that has fallen into a thought pattern that is not desirable, even harmful. It arises in moments when we lose our equanimity and our power to reason objectively, because our emotions are too intense to allow for clear, objective analysis. It is at this moment of being at a moral crossroad that we turn our attention to our chosen counterforce, a compelling thought or image that opens our heart, that uplifts, inspires, and refocuses the mind. Our choice of a counterforce thought is personal. Choose whatever works for you. It might take a little time and experimentation to find the one that best suits you, but the effort is well worth it. Just make sure it's a thought or image that has the power to reorient the mind, to pull it back from its disturbing course and onto something positive. This is a straightforward practice, but don't let that mislead you. There is great power at the core of this practice. We know that one of yoga's most fundamental objectives is to transcend the limited ego in order to experience the transcendent self. Every successful attempt at Pratipaksha Bhavana, every time your counterforce thought succeeds in subduing a wayward impulse or doubt, results in the transcendence of the ego. Now, some examples of counterforce thoughts include the image of a deity, a mantra, a powerful, inspiring quote, whatever works for you. It is the one thought that you will turn to in order to oppose the wayward thoughts that disturb the mind. For example, if thoughts of impatience arise in your mind, you might turn your attention to the serene image of the Buddha. Or when an anxiety arises, repeat a mantra that is dear to you, like Om Shanti. When there is disharmony with a coworker, you could bring up the quote, "Peace is your nature, do not disturb it." It's not necessary to find a different counterforce thought for every negative thought pattern. In fact, it works best when we find one thought that we use to counter all negative emotions. The more we use it, the stronger it becomes. The second form that Pratipaksha Bhavana takes cultivates a mindset that prevents the wayward thoughts and doubts from even arising. It's like a vaccine that helps immunize us against future negative or unhelpful thoughts, words, and deeds. It's used when we are not at the crossroads, when we can carefully reflect, even meditate on the following truth, which alerts us to the damage, to the unhappiness that negative thoughts can cause. This form of Pratipaksha Bhavana provides us with important food for contemplation. It nudges us to examine painful experiences in life deeply enough to find the true and lasting inspiration and get on and stay on the path of the yoga life. The sutra reads, dubious reasoning and wayward thoughts, such as causing harm, etc., whether done, incited, or approved of, whether arising from lust, anger, or delusion, and regardless of being mild, medium, or extreme in intensity, have ignorance and endless dissatisfaction and suffering as their fruits. Reflecting on this is also Pratipaksha Bhavana. Now, these dubious reasoning and wayward thoughts can manifest as thoughts that are hateful, resentful, violent, dishonesty, anytime we sacrifice moral for personal gain, gossip and backbiting, lust, both physical and for wealth and power, prejudices, lack of gratitude, seeking praise, fear and anxiety, sadness, even abuse of our natural resources or careless or thoughtless abuse of objects. This sutra alerts us to all these potential pitfalls and helps us to prevent falling into them. As you work with both forms of Pratipaksha Bhavana, you'll gain greater skill with them. Add it to your yoga toolbox and use it frequently. It is one of the great keys to peace, harmony, compassion, and loving kindness. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Peace, Peace, Peace. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light.